April 2017, Amherst, New York. FBI agents and Erie County Sheriff's deputies storm a 9,000-square-foot French provincial mansion on LeBrun Road. The target, Ronald Serio, a local businessman. They breach the door at dawn. Inside, they find a marijuana grow room, bricks of cocaine, packaged drugs ready for distribution, and $22,000 cash. An AR-15 rifle. More cash and narcotics at a second property on Grimsby Road. Serio, dressed in pajamas, watches his empire collapse in real time. "Do you have anything to say?" a deputy asks. Serio goes quiet. Then he speaks. "Can I talk to Joe Bongiovanni?" The deputy's eyes narrow. "Are you working for him as an informant?" Serio doesn't answer. But those 5 words, that one name, just triggered the biggest corruption investigation in Buffalo DEA history. The deputy didn't know it yet, but Joseph Bongiovanni wasn't running Serio as an informant. It was the other way around. Serio was paying him, and Serio was pissed. He thought he was protected. He thought his $250,000 in bribes meant he'd never see the inside of a jail cell. They caught the big fish, prosecutors would later say, and the big fish was furious. Within hours, federal investigators start digging. What they uncover is a betrayal so deep it shakes law enforcement to its core. A decorated DEA agent, a 20-year career, a man who saved lives and kicked down doors as the lead breacher. Now the prime suspect in the most brazen corruption scheme Western New York has ever seen. North Buffalo, 1970s and 80s. Joseph Bongiovanni grows up in a tight-knit Italian-American community where loyalty means everything. Everyone knows everyone. Families go back generations, and some of those families have connections, the kind you don't talk about in public. Young Joe is surrounded by childhood friends, Louis Selva, Michael Masecchia, Peter Gerace Jr. They grow up together, play together, trust each other completely. Bongiovanni watches as some of the older men in the neighborhood, the ones who play cards at the Hertel Avenue Club with his father, command respect. These are suspected members of Italian organized crime. Young Joe learns early, you show respect to these people. Lou Selva becomes his best friend. Years later, Selva will be the best man at Bongiovanni's wedding. Michael Masecchia goes to high school and college with him. They're inseparable. Peter Gerace Jr. is another neighborhood kid, grandson of Joseph Todaro, the reputed head of the Buffalo Mafia. These aren't just friends, they're brothers. And in their world, loyalty is sacred. Bongiovanni joins the Erie County Sheriff's Office. 3 years later, in 1998, he becomes a DEA special agent. The American dream, a kid from North Buffalo protecting his country from drug dealers. He's assigned to the Buffalo Resident Office in 2001. He's good at his job. Great, actually. Bongiovanni becomes the lead breacher, the first man through the door on raids. It's the most dangerous position. You never know what's waiting. Armed dealers, booby traps, a hail of bullets. But Bongiovanni volunteers for it every time. He once ran into a burning apartment building, crawling through billowing smoke to evacuate residents. He helped prosecute the first fatal overdose case in the region. Before every shift, he calls his mother to say he loves her. To the community, he's a hero. But behind the badge, something else is brewing. His childhood friends aren't living the American dream. They're building drug empires. And Bongiovanni has a choice to make. 2008. Joseph Bongiovanni is having problems. His first marriage collapses. Alimony, child support. The bills pile up. He remarries, and his new wife has expensive tastes, vacations, designer clothes, a 1960 convertible Buick. The DEA salary doesn't stretch far enough. Meanwhile, his childhood friends are getting rich. Lou Selva is growing marijuana and working as a courier. Michael Masecchia is a Buffalo public schools teacher by day, but he's also moving serious weight, with alleged ties to organized crime. Ronald Serio, the financier, is raking in millions, building connections in New York City, California, Vancouver. And then there's Peter Gerace Jr., running Pharaoh's Gentlemen's Club in Cheektowaga. A strip club where cocaine flows freely, where whales, high-rolling customers, pay for sex in the VIP room, where judges, lawyers, and important people in the community come to play. Gerace needs protection. All of them do. That's when Lou Selva makes his pitch. He knows Bongiovanni is struggling financially. He knows Bongiovanni occasionally uses cocaine with him, not just in college, but even now, as a DEA agent. Selva knows his friend's weaknesses, so he makes an offer, $2,000 a month. Later, it increases to $4,000, a retainer. All Bongiovanni has to do is protect his friends. Look the other way, provide information, make investigations disappear. Bongiovanni knows it's wrong, but these are his brothers, the guys he grew up with, the men he respects, and he needs the money, so he says yes. It's not a dramatic moment, no envelope of cash in a dark alley, just two childhood friends sitting together, agreeing to a deal that will destroy everything Bongiovanni has built. The scheme is simple. Serio provides the money. Masecchia makes the face-to-face payments. Selva is the middleman, the connection between all of them. And Bongiovanni? He becomes a double agent, working for both the DEA and the criminals he's supposed to stop. For the next 11 years, he protects them, and they pay him at least $250,000. Bongiovanni doesn't just take money and look the other way. He's strategic, he's smart, he's been trained by the best. Now he uses that training to protect his friends. First, he opens a DEA case file on the Masecchia Serio drug trafficking organization. But it's fake, a ghost investigation. The file exists so that when other law enforcement agencies, the FBI, state police, local cops, start sniffing around his friends, those agencies defer to him. "We're already investigating this," Bongiovanni tells them. "Let us handle it." But he's not investigating anything. He's stalling, protecting, burying evidence before it ever surfaces. Second, he uses DEA deconfliction databases. These are systems designed to prevent different agencies from stepping on each other's toes during investigations. Bongiovanni enters information about the traffickers he's protecting into the system. Now, if any other agency starts investigating his friends, he gets an automatic alert. He knows immediately, and he warns them. Third, he provides inside information, the identities of confidential informants, the status of specific investigations, law enforcement techniques and tactics, everything his friends need to stay one step ahead. (2013) A DEA agent named David Leary identifies a suspicious building on Sycamore Street. It's 400 yards from the DEA office. Leary thinks it's part of the drug ring's operation. He starts surveillance. When he tells Bongiovanni, the senior agent shuts him down. "Back off," Bongiovanni says. No explanation. Later, prosecutors will argue Bongiovanni didn't want Leary finding evidence that would expose his friends. Bongiovanni's lawyers counter that surveillance isn't always the best move. It can tip off dealers. The truth, only Bongiovanni knows. But the drug ring flourishes. What started as a marijuana growing operation in the southern tier expands to New York City, then California, then Vancouver. They move 10,000 pounds of marijuana, 5 kilos of cocaine. Serio buys his $715,000 mansion and pours another $700,000 into improvements. Masecchia keeps teaching English at Buffalo Public Schools while running a drug empire on the side. And Bongiovanni, he keeps collecting his $4,000 a month. He tells colleagues to spend less time investigating Italians and focus on Black and Hispanic people instead. He authors bogus DEA reports. He steals sensitive files. He exposes 3 confidential informants. For over a decade, the system works. Nobody suspects a thing until April 2017, when the Erie County Sheriff's Office and the FBI raid Serio's mansion. The raid that changes everything. The raid that Bongiovanni never saw coming because he wasn't in the loop. The DEA was deliberately left out. Investigators suspected a leak. They were right. Serio's arrest triggers an avalanche. Investigators start asking questions. Why did Serio mention Bongiovanni's name? What's their connection? Federal agents dig deeper. They interview Serio. He talks. He admits to funding a bribery scheme. He says he never met Bongiovanni personally, but he gave money to Masecchia, who passed it along. $250,000 over nearly a decade. Selva flips next. Bongiovanni's best friend, the best man at his wedding, cooperates with the government. He admits negotiating the bribery arrangement. He testifies that Bongiovanni occasionally used cocaine with him, even as a DEA agent. He describes the payoffs, the protection, the betrayal. Masecchia pleads guilty in December 2020. He admits receiving law enforcement sensitive information from Bongiovanni. He's sentenced to 7 years in prison. He doesn't testify at trial, but his plea agreement confirms everything. Investigators raid Bongiovanni's Tonawanda home. They find a cardboard box labeled in large letters, DEA evidence. Inside, sensitive files that should never have left the office. Files on investigations. Files on people he was supposed to investigate but protected instead. November 2019. Federal prosecutors indict Joseph Bongiovanni on 11 counts: conspiracy to defraud the United States, conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, bribery, obstruction of justice, making false statements. The indictment alleges he used his position to shield drug traffickers he believed were connected to Italian organized crime from 2008 to 2019. Bongiovanni retires from the DEA in February 2019, the moment he learns he's under investigation. He's arrested months later. The news rocks Buffalo. A decorated DEA agent, a hero, now facing decades in prison. But Bongiovanni insists he's innocent. He loved his job. He loved his badge. He kept his oath every day for 20 years. This is all a misunderstanding. The government disagrees. March 2024. The first trial begins. Prosecutors paint Bongiovanni as a corrupt double agent who violated his oath for money and loyalty to organized crime. They call 70 witnesses. Lou Selva testifies, describing the bribery scheme in detail. Ronald Serio takes the stand, naming names, confirming the payments. Former dancers from Pharaoh's Gentlemen's Club describe drug use and sex trafficking. DEA agents testify that Bongiovanni discouraged investigations and protected his friends. The defense argues there's no proof Bongiovanni ever received the money. Maybe Masecchia pocketed it himself. Maybe Serio is lying to save himself. Maybe Selva is a heroin addict desperate for leniency. The defense never claims Bongiovanni is perfect, but they insist he's not guilty. The jury deliberates. They convict him on 3 counts, but they deadlock on the rest. A hung jury on the most serious charges, including bribery. The government retries him. August 2024. A second trial, 8 more weeks, 60 more witnesses. This time, the defense strategy shifts, but Bongiovanni still doesn't testify. He stays silent, letting his lawyers do the talking. October 10, 2024. The second jury convicts him on 7 of 11 counts: conspiracy to defraud the United States, conspiracy to distribute controlled substances, 4 counts of obstruction of justice, 1 count of making false statements. But the jury acquits him on the bribery charge involving $250,000 from the mafia. They acquit him on charges directly tied to Peter Gervais and Pharaoh's strip club. It's a split verdict, not the clean win prosecutors wanted, but enough to send Bongiovanni to prison. Federal sentencing guidelines recommend 8 to 10 years. Prosecutors push for 15, comparing him to Jose Irizarry, a disgraced DEA agent serving 12 years for laundering money for Colombian cartels. Bongiovanni's lawyers argue for 2 years of home confinement. He's 61 years old. He has skin cancer. He's a former cop, and prison for ex-law enforcement is dangerous. January 22, 2026. Bongiovanni stands before U.S. District Judge Lawrence Villardo. The courtroom is packed. Family members sit in the front row, weeping. His wife, Lindsay, who has supported him through 6.5 years of legal hell, watches her husband face his fate. Bongiovanni speaks. His voice cracks. His face reddens with emotion. He pounds the defense table. "I never knew what was on the other side of that door when I was the lead breacher. That fear is what I feel today. I've always been innocent. I loved my badge. I loved my job. I kept my oath every day for 20 years. He looks at the judge. I respect the judicial process, but I cannot accept the outcome of this case. Your Honor, I am innocent, and I will continue to fight until my name is cleared. The prosecutors counter. Assistant U.S. Attorney Joseph Trippi argues the conviction demonstrates that Bongiovanni's conduct undermined law enforcement and the community fundamentally. They describe his corruption as a little dark secret that caused immeasurable damage over 11 years. Judge Velardo delivers the sentence: 5 years in federal prison, 3 years of supervised release. There are two completely polar opposite versions of the facts and polar opposite versions of the defendant, Velardo says. There's no doubt in my mind that you've done a lot of good things in your life, but on the other hand, this is serious stuff. 5 years, less than the guidelines, far less than the 15 years prosecutors wanted, but far more than the home confinement Bongiovanni hoped for. He's allowed to remain on home confinement pending his appeal. He walks out of the courthouse with Lindsay, facing the cameras, the stairs, the judgment of a community that once called him a hero. Meanwhile, Peter Gerace Jr. faces his own reckoning. December 27, 2024, a jury convicts him on 8 of 9 counts: bribing Bongiovanni, sex trafficking, drug trafficking, maintaining a drug-involved premises, witness tampering. He faces life in prison at his August 2025 sentencing. The federal government moves to seize Pharaoh's Gentlemen's Club. Michael Masecchia is already serving 7 years. Ronald Serio receives just 2 years for cooperating. Lou Selva gets leniency for testifying. And Joseph Bongiovanni? He maintains his innocence. He tells reporters he'll appeal. He'll fight until his name is cleared. But the badge he loved, the oath he swore, the career he built, all of it is gone. Destroyed by loyalty to childhood friends, destroyed by $4,000 a month, destroyed by a choice he made in 2008 that he can never take back. The man who once saved lives by running into burning buildings now faces 5 years behind bars for protecting the criminals he swore to stop. A hero who became a double agent, a protector who became the threat. And a reminder that in law enforcement, the fall from grace is always steeper than the climb to the top.